everyone, Alyssa Knight coming at you with another episode of Aite Radio. We have a very special guest with us today, Don Cardinal, who is the Managing Director at the Financial Data Exchange. The Financial Data Exchange is a consortium that's created an open standard for secure access to your financial information at financial institutions. And before becoming the managing director at FDX, Don was the senior vice president of global information security for Bank of America. So sit back, relax, grab that cup of joe, and join us for another episode of Aite Radio coming up. So Don, thank you for being on our show today. It's great to have you here. I'd love the world to know about who you are and who the Financial Data Exchange is.
Well, thank you for having us. The Financial Data Exchange is a nonprofit dedicated to unifying the global financial services industry around a common, interoperable, royalty-free standard to allow the permissioned and secure sharing of consumer financial data. I know it's a mouthful.
It is. So for our listeners who have no idea what that means, why don't you explain it in layman's terms and also maybe give a use case or example of how they might experience FDX in the real world?
Sure. In days past, if you were to download an app from the App Store to help you with your budgeting, the first question it does is say, oh, great, tell me where you're spending your money. And you tell it what bank you bank with. It says, great, give me your ID and password. And you just give up your ID and password to a FinTech that you've never seen before. And millions of people have done that. And then it goes and logs in and pretends to be you and scrapes the data out of that bank. What if you have the same operability, but you never had to give up your credentials? You never had to share your ID and password. And we've done that today. So it works very much the same way. That FinTech says, hey, where do you bank? You say, great. It hands you over to that bank. The bank then says, hey, listen, I'd authenticate yourself. You do using the same method you already do today. You touch your phone, you talk to yourself, boom, you're in, hands you back, and you're off to the races. Customer doesn't do anything different. But here's the difference. That FinTech now no longer holds your credentials. So God forbid, worst case, you can't breach what you don't have. Don't have it, you can't lose it.
Right. So adversaries targeting those FinTechs who are hoping to get usernames and passwords for those banking customers, they won't find anything.
In there.
Wow. That's cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for the explanation.
Appreciate it.
So for everyone's own edification, who are you and where do you come from? And start from the top.
Sure. I'm Don Cardinal. I'm the Managing Director of Financial Data Exchange. Informally, that means Chief Cat Herder. I came from a career at 23 years at Bank of America, where I had a variety of responsibilities. One of the last ones was, of course, participating in the formation of Financial Data Exchange. Before that, I actually worked for a FinTech writing tax preparation software. So I've been on both sides of this.
Oh, interesting. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the multiple banks are actually involved in this FDX sort of consortium. It's a consortium, right? Would that be accurate to call it a consortium?
That's entirely correct. And we have all the links in the chain. So you have the FinTech apps who request the data, aggregators, permission parties, credit bureaus, core processors, and the financial services companies themselves, banks, brokerage, what have you, insurance companies. So we have a little bit of everybody all taking part of it. We have the large FIs, small FIs, credit unions, as well as, like I said, bureaus, cores. Everyone's getting this together. We're the only group that's really brought the entire ecosystem under one roof.
Okay. So give us a use case. All right. So I've got some sort of financial services mobile, I don't know, like Venmo or something. I don't know. It's like I'm going to send someone money with a mobile app. Is FDX somewhere in there? Like, are you guys the plumbing?
We write the rules for the plumbing. So let's use that case, and then I'll use a different case. So let's say you want to send money to somebody. The first thing that the money center wants to do is verify that Alyssa Knight is the owner of the account that she's trying to send money from and not somebody else's, right?
Right.
So how do you do that today? Well, you have to give up your ID and password to that financial institution.
Right. You log in with B of A or whomever.
Well, actually, you can just handed that transfer agent your ID and password. They have a pretty screen that looks like it's the financial institution, but it's not.
Oh,
so
okay.
You've given up your credentials. Surprise.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it's not. As a matter of fact, the Treasury last year came out with something and said, hey, this is not a good idea.
Yeah.
So what if you had the same level of access, but you didn't have to do that? So the way it works in the new paradigm is the session hands you over to the FI. You authenticate and they go, yes, really is Alyssa Knight. We're 100% sure. Are you sure you want to allow this company access? Yes, we do. For this purpose, for account validation, for whatever. Yes, I do. Until you renew it. Yep. And you hand it back. just an extra screen. It's no different than what you're used to today when you authenticate. But here's the point. Your credentials are now no longer held away from your FI, your bank, your brokerage. They don't hold them. They can't lose them. You just de-risk that whole exchange.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, if they're breached, there's no treasure trove of usernames and passwords too.
Exactly. So, it's not just for account validation. Imagine you're doing your taxes, or let's say you're a small business, of course. Let's say you're doing your bookkeeping, right? You log into a Xero or a QuickBooks. Right. The first thing it asks you is, hey, where do you bank?
Right. And then you authenticate.
Yes. So you hand over your credentials to this software company and they go log in on your behalf. Again, they hold your ID and password. And
they use APIs, of course, to communicate. And we can talk about PSD2 here in a minute. But that using APIs, you've got your OAuth, you've got your token. All that stuff happens in the plumbing and in the background.
Right. So under the new paradigm, instead of grabbing your ID password and just hitting your front door with a little script pretending to be you, instead they actually go to a business grade interface, an application programming interface with real business to business corporate level security to make sure it really is an Intuit or a Xero or whomever.
Right.
And then they, of course, authenticate you without passwords. So again, it's safer, it's more secure, and it's more scalable. It's how we would do it if we had to do it from scratch today.
What recognizable organizations, financial institutions, for some of our listeners would recognize who's involved in this? Are these small community banks? Who is involved in it? I'm assuming it sounds like there's this whole world going on that maybe not everyone knows about. And so if you can kind of...
Sure. Wells, Citi, Chase, Bank of America.
So some big names.
USAA, PenFed, Navy Federal. PenFed's not a member yet. Fidelity Information Systems is the core processor behind many of the small banks and credit unions out there. MasterCard and Visa are both members. SunTrust, BB&T. The list goes on.
How do you guys make your money? Do they pay? How do you guys keep your lights on?
Well, we don't.
How do you make money?
Good question. Well, first of all, there's no charge to use our API, and you can even download it for free. We're not for profit.
Okay, so if I wanted to make a FinTech, if I was a FinTech startup, I could actually download
yes.
this and use it.
Come to our website, promise not to patent it. You get us back, and then you're off the races. But we encourage people to join. The reason is and the example I give is you can download blueprints for your home and go build your own home. But unless you're really used to doing that, probably not going to be terribly successful.
Right.
But certainly we want people to join, and that's how we make our money. Quite honestly, it's how we pay and keep the lights on and provide tools for everybody else. And we have a sliding scale on dues so that a FinTech, so Don and Alyssa's FinTech app, probably join for $1,000 a year, less than $100 a month.
Oh, wow.
Whereas a large FinTech or a large firm with several $1 billion in revenue would probably spend $40,000 a year.
Okay. And it's advantageous for the bank to sign up to be able to market a more secure transport mechanism. What's the reason behind the large financial institution to join?
There's several fold. One of them is simply put, screen scraping is incredibly inefficient. Anywhere from 25 to 40% of a large FI's daily session volume are scrapers.
Oh, wow.
Think about the millions of dollars of web servers, app servers, database servers, and people to keep them patched have to be employed just to service. An API is an order of magnitude more efficient. So you could take 10 million, say it was $20 million a year you were spending to serve up these sessions via scrapers. That would be closer to $2 million a year via an API. So it's $18 million a year over year savings. And that's just on the hardware alone. Plus, you're getting away from held away credentials. So you're de-risking that population. Because remember, if you're a financial institution, if there's ever an issue, who is the customer going to come to be made whole? The financial institution.
The financial institution, the FI.
So they have every incentive to work to try to de-risk the ecosystem, which is why we have all the major players members.
Okay, so so we have so there's FDX, and then there's OpenID and can you explain the relationship between FDX and OAuth and OpenID and?
Well, sure. OAuth is just another open standard for tokenized access between 2 points. You probably use it if you use Google or Facebook to log in somewhere.
Right.
That uses tokenized access. What the OpenID Foundation did is they actually improved upon it and put another tokenization layer with transport layer security on top to create a thing called OpenID Connect, which is really the authentication mechanism we use here in FDX and is also used in the EU for their open banking implementation. So we use that as our mechanism for authentication. Ironically, although we borrowed that from them, they borrowed our data spec for their spec. So if you're using open banking in the UK, odds are you're using FDX's data specification.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Hey, let's talk about that for a minute. So a lot of people probably heard about PSD2 and the Open Banking Initiative in Europe. Can you talk about that for a minute? Explain that to the listeners. What is PSD2 and in a way that they can understand, and how does that play in with FDX, that sort of thing?
Sure. I'll give you the very, very short version. Payment Services Directive 2.0 is actually a series of laws passed in the EU. Now, the piece that's germane to this topic is about open banking. And that is they mandated a mechanism whereby consumers were going to be allowed to permission access to their financial data to approved parties. And the UK was the first to say, hey, we're going to do it. They created an entity to say, here's the standards, here's the stack. We're going to use the tech stack we're going to use behind that. It's called the Open Banking Implementation Entity, or OBI for short. And they're the ones who led the charge with that, got to open banking in production, if you will, first in the EU.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but basically that means that every bank in the EU has to have APIs facing the internet for people to connect into.
That's correct. And a mechanism to authenticate people and a mechanism to authenticate parties to make sure that they're indeed real fintechs and not fake fintechs out of sanctioned nations and all those type of controls and all the fun stuff.
This smells really bad. Like I could see this going south real fast as it pertains to, adversaries and, targeting that attack surface.
Well, we consider that screen scraping has been going on since the late 90s. So you're looking at 20 plus years of already front door access.
Yeah, that's true.
So again, this is a dramatic improvement upon it. But that's one of the advantages of having every link in the chain working together. Nobody wants to have one of those really bad days. If you're a fintech firm, all you really have is your market valuation. One bad news story, one bad day, and there's nothing left to hand over to the consumer.
Okay, so European bank, let's take PSD2 for example. So European bank, EU ACME bank, they have to spin up this API for PSD2 and make their data available. Do they go to you and say secure this? How would you work with that bank?
Well, normally, like I said, in the EU, you have to go through some government entity to be registered.
Okay, so it's a little more complex as a middleman.
Yes, government's involved in the European Union. That's
very much involved.
Very much so. So again, you have to be registered. You have to show that you're a going concern. You have the right amount of insurance and minimum security controls to be allowed to access it. Whereas here in North America, it's a voluntary organization. We are coming together voluntarily.
It's not compulsory in the US. Whereas in EU, it would be compulsory.
No, which ironically is part of the reason why we've been able to grow so fast. FDX stood up and existed as of October 18th of last year. We were already at 2 million people in production as of January. We're going to be at 6 million by year end.
Was there nothing, were you guys filling a hole? Were you guys filling a gap? Was there really no precursor to FDX that people could go to? Like, how did that, what existed before you guys?
Sure. So part of the FS-ISAC, which again, for your listeners, they are a consortium of FinTech or financial services firms involved in security and protecting FIs, sharing data, and anti-fraud. They had a working group for 2 years prior, 2016, 2017, to say, hey, we got to do something about these held away credentials. There's too much risk out there in the ecosystem. And so they put together a prototype, precursor version of this, but it wasn't seeing a lot of adoption because the only ones who could be members of FS-ISAC were regulated financial services companies. So all the fintechs, all the aggregators and such couldn't be part of that. And it turns out you need both parties on the data exchange to really be successful.
Sure. You need both sides of the conversation.
So
yeah,
yes.
And I think I've approached FS-ISAC in the past for membership, and it's extremely expensive. Like I thought if we're talking about the same thing, I think it's like extremely expensive
to join.
To join.
It is, but you get quite a bit of value from it being a member. Again, look at the trillions of dollars at risk by the member firms. It's a relatively cheap investment.
Yeah, that's true. So
yeah, there is that. And the trillions of dollars of market cap that these firms' brands represent.
So before you guys, they could go to FS-ISAC. Now you guys exist, and you guys are not for profit.
That's correct. So FS-ISAC had this, and they had a precursor version of this data spec. Unfortunately, didn't see a lot of adoption.
Okay.
Once we opened it up to non-financial services companies and really kind of balanced the equation out, we saw rapid adoption.
To what's the numbers now?
Well, like I said, it was 2 million at year end. And the last numbers we have from a survey said everyone hopes to be about 6 million by year end.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. Unfortunately, the same survey indicated there were nearly 40 million people who've given up their credentials in the ecosystem.
Oh,
so we still have...
The good news is credentials and passwords can change. So,
yes. But we're gaining on them. We are actually gaining on them.
Yeah. So, okay. That's interesting. I guess my question is, so would FS-ISAC be a competitor to you guys? Or?
No, not at all. We're actually a subsidiary of FS-ISAC. They
really?
They're on our board of directors.
Spun out. So you guys are a spin out from FS-ISAC?
Just like FS-ARC or Sheltered Harbor? Absolutely.
No way. Oh, that's weird. Okay, so I'm totally detangling this. Okay, so you guys are a spin out from FS-ISAC.
Yep.
You're not for profit.
Correct.
So is this your brainchild? Like,
no, there are a lot of people way smarter than me who've been involved in the space for a while.
But you were made the CEO.
Yes, a managing director. Again, chief cat herder. We have 55 member firms.
That's important. Like, you're important. You're kind of a big deal.
Oh, we are. The technology is affecting us.
That's cool. All right. Okay. So I guess then can you explain the FDX API? That is what you can download, correct? So if you want to integrate with FDX, you would download the FDX-API.
Right. There's basically a set of blueprints. So you get a data specification, a data security white paper, and some YAML code, and eventually we'll have some Swagger code available. So you can download that and some other artifacts to then build your own. Remember, we're tech agnostic. You could be Linux, Unix. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter the operating system, yeah.
The API itself is built on a protocol called REST. So it's a RESTful API.
REST API. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so JSON request response, OAuth or OpenID Connect for consumer authentication. Again, we looked around the world and said, what's the best in class? For example, we highly recommend multi-factor authentication of the consumer and biometrics. So we reference FIDO for biometrics.
I was about to say, like, so there's Strong Key. There's all these other vendors who are building the FIDO. And now I think FIDO 2 has come out or is not yet out. Or what is coming out?
It sort of is 1.2, and then there's some aspects that do have a 2.0 flavor to them. If you go out to the website,
that's you have YubiKey. So I could actually use a YubiKey or a Strong Key with FDX if I were to integrate the two together.
Absolutely. So a financial institution needs to do nothing special as far as authentication.
Because it's all open standards. None of it's proprietary stuff.
Right. More importantly, though, if you think about it, if you're Joe Bank or Alyssa Bank, you're already used to authenticating customers, ID, password, you know their device. Maybe you do multi-factor through a FIDO biometric through touch or face. You can already use all those tools today. You don't need to build any special tools to authenticate this consumer coming over, being handed over from a FinTech app. So that's the beauty of it. I'm not asking you to rebuild your own. All I'm asking you to do is build a secure gate that, oh, by the way, has B2B level control, business to business level controls you would with any other supplier.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Remember, FS-ISAC is on our roots. That security and privacy is in our DNA.
Yeah. So what's your vision? What's the vision? What's next for FDX? Give me your vision, for going into over the next 12, 24 months.
Well, again, we're continuing to grow. We have 55 members. We expect that to grow. As word gets out, people see the benefit of it. It's competitive advantage. So for security parity, other people will join. We see continued liaisons and integration agreements with other parties. For example, the Open Financial Exchange, OFX, which was a leader in this space and really for a number of years, has agreed to come under FDX just recently. So that's rather big news. There are over 13,000 OFX implementations around the world. So we've agreed to work together to try to harmonize our specs to make sure we get to that modern spec for everybody, that everyone's protected, everyone is secure. So we see this going Canada to APAC, EMEA. Really, we see this working for everybody because we have a balanced solution and we're member driven. Remember, you and my FinTech starting in a garage has the same vote in a working group as a Wells or a Citi or a Chase. Best idea wins.
Right.
So you have every incentive for the community to join up and participate.
That's cool. So you have a lot of work on your head.
We do. I have a great group of volunteer organizations. I can't say enough about them. We are hiring up staff. So if you come to our website, there are people we're trying to hire.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do people get involved? How do people contribute? How do they find you?
Well, the easiest way is financialdataexchange.org. We're also on LinkedIn. You can follow us on our blog. We're on Twitter at FDX.org.
Okay.
But if you come out, again, we're 501c6. So as much as you can donate anything you like, but you just can't deduct it on your taxes. What we really want is your participation. We want your great ideas.
Yeah.
So come join up. As we talked about earlier, it's very reasonable to do so. Bring your best ideas. We have a lot of neat things we do. We meet every couple of weeks in different working groups. There's something for everyone. If you're a security architect, great. We've got a forum for that. We've got one for data structures, one for the user experience. We will be standing up a sandbox and a code repository for people to test in and to eventually certify against.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But given that we've got 2 million in production today with some of the largest names in finance who are regularly red teamed and blue teamed
all the time. Those implementations who have used your spec are tested. Yeah. Okay.
So that's the beauty of it. And that's the beauty of having so many people, testing it out and using it.
Okay. That's cool. Well, I appreciate you being on the show today. This has been awesome. There's this whole other world I didn't know about that was happening right underneath me while I was using these apps and that our listeners using and just didn't know that FDX was there or built, designed around your guys' spec. And that's neat.
We appreciate it. Tell 10 friends. We'd love everyone to join. It's very reasonable to do. And like I said, we're not trying to get rich. We're just trying to save the world. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, thanks again, Don. It was a pleasure meeting you. How can people find you if they want to reach out to you and say hi?
Hit me on LinkedIn. I'm there. And of course, if you join FDX, I work for you. And so all my members have my cell phone number.
Great.
We're very, very inverted pyramid. Our members are on top and they control what we do and what I do to serve them.
Love it. Love it. Server mentality as a leader.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. All right, Don. Well, you take care. Thank you very much for being a guest on our show, and good luck with what you guys are building. It sounds like, but it sounds like you don't need the luck. You guys do an amazing job.
We appreciate it.
Community.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, everyone get involved and help out for help out the greater good and saving the world and ridding it of evil.
Thanks.
Thanks.